We're following several big stories right now. The years-long battle between Rick Pitino and U of L is over. The reason the former coach walked away without a penny.
A really big problem with Kentucky's Real ID. Without the license, you won't be able to fly or get on a military base without a passport. Today, WDRB learned that the state wants to scrap the entire plan, what it wants to do instead with a tight deadline looming.
And a Louisville legend has died. Look at the legacy Humana founder David on this community.
Good morning, everybody. Thanks for joining us today. I'm Chris Suter.
I'm Valerie Chin. We begin our big news day today with a WDRB exclusive. Kentucky is stopping the rollout of Real ID and starting from scratch to distribute the new IDs.
The pilot program now is only in place in 2 counties, but circuit court clerks there are already overwhelmed. Only WDRB obtained a memo that shows the Transportation Cabinet wants to create regional locations to handle Real IDs. Kentucky has only 1 year left to comply with the federal mandate, which was issued 14 years ago. Starting next October, people without a Real ID will have to have a passport to fly in the U.S. or enter military posts. Reporter Marcus Green broke this story late this morning. You can read his story right now on WDRB.com.
The legal battle between University of Louisville and Rick Pitino is finally over. The two just reached a settlement this morning.
WDRB's Lexi Ratterman explains there's no money involved in the deal. Lexi.
Yeah, that's right, Valerie and Chris. The U of L Athletic Association has been in a long-time battle with Rick Pitino after he was fired 2 years ago amid FBI investigations into his basketball team's scandals. Today, though, they have reached a settlement to say that Pitino's personnel file will now say he resigned as opposed to being fired. Pitino sued the university for about $44 million, which was the remainder of his contract. But with this settlement, absolutely no money will be exchanged. Pitino's suit claimed the school was wrong to use the Sex for Recruits scandal as a reason for firing him because he was found to not have played a role in that. The long-time back-and-forth negotiations have finally come to an end, and athletic director Vince Tyree says he's ready to move on.
You know, Rick accomplished a lot here as head coach, and our record books do show that. And although there be asterisks there at times, he's done quite a bit. So I don't know if their hands are ready. You know, I think there's no doubt release. A lot was accomplished under his realm as well.
WDRB Sports' Eric Crawford now joins us to break this down. It's been a long time coming, and today it is finally over for now. I don't think anything else will come of this, do you?
No, University and Pitino have both agreed not to take any further legal action against each other as part of this settlement. It's a very abrupt end, a very surprising end where you just see both sides walk away and no money change hands, but I think it speaks to how much Rick Pitino wants to move on and get back into the coaching profession. He said he did this against the advice of his attorney, Steve Pence.
Now, something that's kind of interesting about this is actually Pitino was given the option before he was fired to resign. So talk a little about that.
Well, the language says now that it will be considered a resignation, but obviously that's how all this started. Louisville called Pitino in, gave him the option to resign, and he wouldn't, so then he was fired. I don't know that this agreement in itself makes it any easier for colleges to go out and hire Rick Pitino, but maybe it does. Maybe there's a job. Once the lawsuit against you is dropped, maybe we'll consider you. He just wants it over, I think.
The future definitely unknown for him. Now, something you'd mentioned, Rick Pitino said he went against the advice of his lawyer to drop this lawsuit. If he had not and he'd continued on with this battle, how much longer do you think it could have went, and do you think it could have ended in his favor?
This could have been a long, protracted, ugly situation for years for the university. The presumption is he would have gotten some money. He almost always gets some money, but he was racking up legal bills. The university's racking up legal bills. What would be interesting to know is what other conversations there might have been to make all this come about.
Vince Tyree says himself, as well as the entire university, is ready to move on. Rick Pitino says he's ready to move on. We'll see what the future holds for both the university and Rick Pitino. For now, signing off, he's Eric Crawford. I'm Lexi Ratterman for WDRB News.
Lexi and Eric, thank you. Louisville lost one of its legends today. The co-founder of Humana has died. WDRB's Gilbert Coursey shares a legacy of David Jones Sr.
Well, Jones' legacy, Val, goes beyond the health insurance giant of Humana. He is one of Louisville's greatest philanthropists. After co-founding Humana in 1961, years later he created the Humana Foundation, a charitable arm of the company. The organization funds scholarships, programs serving the poor and underserved communities, and health-related grants. Since 1975, Humana and its foundations have given nearly $3 million to community partners. And Jones gave of his own wealth as well. He famously offered $10 million of his own money to get new Ohio River bridges built in 2001. Some called it a public pressure move after the closure of the Sherman-Minton Bridge caused a traffic nightmare. Well, it worked, and we now have two new links tying Kentucky and Indiana. And you may also recall a $15 million donation to develop the parklands of Floyd's Fork back in 2013. It preserved nearly 4,000 acres of land in eastern and southern Louisville that was previously undeveloped. And then just last week, the president of Simmons College of Kentucky explained how a Jones donation changed the course of the school's history.
To demonstrate his confidence in our vision, David and Betty Jones Sr. gave $1 million in 2005, just 2 months into my presidency. As a result of this investment, Simmons became accredited by the United States Department of Education in 2014 and was designated as a historically black college and university in April of 2015.
We need a 6-lane bridge.
Jones was a Louisville native and graduated from Yale High School, the University of Louisville, and went on to attend Harvard and Yale. His wife, Betty, died last month. Jones died this morning at the age of 88. Gilbert Coursey, WDRB News.
It'll still be hot today.
Katie McGraw explains when we'll have a break from the heat. I like the sounds of this, Katie.
It's not for a few days, so we still have to deal with this really sticky air. Right now it's still very steamy out there. We're going to be seeing a forecast today of 92 degrees. Just to put in perspective for you, this time of the year as we're inching towards the end of September, average is 81. It is going to be less humid though. You started to notice that yesterday as the dew point started to fall. It's still considered humid, but in comparison to when we're into the upper 60s and 70s, it's not terrible. And just a reminder for you that we are mere days away from the official start of fall, 5 days away. It is September 23rd at about 4 in the morning. And right now we have really nice conditions outside. It's sunny out there, 78 degrees and a dew point of 61. So again, it's on the lower end of that humid category. When you get into the 50s, it's really comfortable. And so it's not that oppressive humidity, but I do think at times you might notice it. We are seeing other temperatures around Kentucky and most of us into the middle and upper 70s, a couple of other lower 80s as well. 81 for Hardinsburg, 81 also for Campbellsville. And you can imagine that we're going to be still seeing pretty dry conditions for today when we're looking at that live picture of downtown. We need some rain. In the midst of that drought, we are going to see no rain today, but there's some slim rain chances in the days to come. So we'll talk about that coming up in just minutes. But first things first, an outlook for what you can expect for your Wednesday. Getting to 92 degrees, so it's still very warm. Sunset before 8 o'clock now at 7:47. And is at that point. We'll discuss when this heat wave looks like it's going to break coming up in just a few.
Katie, thank you. Investigating a double drive-by shooting. LMPD thinks someone driving down the street started shooting at another car, causing the driver of that car to crash. You can see the car flipped on its side there. This happened yesterday on River Park Drive close to I-264. Police say a 25-year-old man and a 24-year-old woman were victims of the drive-by. The man in the car died. Police believe it's because he was shot. The woman was taken to the hospital and is expected to survive.
It appears as if they may have possibly been shot at from another moving vehicle. We don't know that for certain. We don't have any information on what that vehicle may have looked like. So, of course, we would ask if anyone has information to call the crime tip hotline at 574-LMPD.
Right now, police don't have any leads on who may have fired those shots. A southern Indiana judge wants to return to the bench after pleading guilty to a misdemeanor battery charge. Clark Circuit Court Judge Andrew Adams requested the reinstatement. Adams and fellow Clark County Judge Brad Jacobs were shot May 1st while in Indianapolis for a conference. Jacobs has returned to the bench. 2 felony counts that led to Adams' suspension were dismissed under a plea agreement. He received a 1-year suspended sentence.
The Hardin County Sheriff's Office needs your help finding a missing man. They're looking for 28-year-old Stephen Yates. Police are not releasing many details, but say he was reported missing on Sunday. If you've seen him and know where he may be, call the Hardin County Sheriff's Office. Another horse dies at Santa Anita Park in California. It's a 31st thoroughbred that has died since this racing season began in December. Santa Anita says a 4-year-old gelding named Zeke died after a pelvic fracture on the training track on Monday. The chief veterinarian says the track is investigating the death. He says the track will continue to work with the California Horse Racing Board and promise to be transparent with the public.
A drone delivery of explosives.
It rained nails. They came out of the sky.
A man is accused of targeting his ex-girlfriend from the sky. The explosions rocked the neighborhood. Why he's not in trouble for setting them off. And this isn't a costume party. This guy robbed a bank. The clue police found outside that may help to find him. Thousands of Indiana teachers converge on the State House for the Red for Ed rally today. The concerns they're voicing.
It's been dominating the headlines for months. Horse after horse dead. The reason? A mystery. The new steps the horse racing industry is now taking to protect its star athletes.
A big problem looms below the surface of a busy Louisville road.
It's always had some issues.
The timetable's set to get it fixed.
Rain is moving in now. In your forecast, I'll show you how much of this to expect and time it out for you hour by hour.
Thanks for staying with us on WDRB News at noon. I'm Valerie Chen.
And I'm Chris Suter. Teachers decked out in red, the big crowd fighting for a reason, education. This scene is happening right now at the Indiana State House.
WDRB Scott Reynolds is in the middle of this rally and explains their message to lawmakers. Scott?
Legislators ran into more than traffic here today in Indianapolis as they headed in to the state capitol for the ceremonial kickoff of the 2020 legislative session. Some 15,000 public educators from across the Hoosier state are here, organized by the teachers union, as about half of the state's public schools are closed. Among those teachers here, Haley Schroeder from Floyd Central. Haley, what do you hope to accomplish with this protest here today in this rally?
I just want my students to be held harmless from the iLearn test. So much money was spent on these tests, and the standardized testing in this state is absolutely ridiculous. How can we spend time actually teaching our students whenever I am missing 2 weeks with my juniors because they're testing?
And Allison Clary, you're here from Jeffersonville High. You say you have a message.
I do. I'm kind of the dinosaur here. I've been grandfathered in, 28 years experience, and I'm here for the younger teachers. I'm here for the future of public education, which includes a lot of my former students, my stepdaughter, my son's in education, and we've got to have a future.
The state says we've dumped $750 million additional dollars into public education. The local districts need to come through for you, the teacher. What do you say to the legislators?
I say they've got a $400 million surplus, I heard, and we've got way too many tests that are failing our students.
Christy Charbonneau, you're here also from Floyd Central. Your thoughts about what might happen as a result of this today? Do you really expect any results?
I'm really hoping that legislators are going to start to listen. We've been screaming and we've been taking the proper routes and rallying on Saturdays and writing our legislators and asking for their help, and they're not paying attention yet, so we're hoping this will get their attention.
Thank you, Christy. About 6,000 educators have made it through security. They'll be in there and talk to some legislators today. And coming up on our evening newscast starting at 4, we'll hear more from Indiana educators and also how rallies and protests like this, all the way from Arizona to North Carolina, have brought results. In Indianapolis, Scott Reynolds, WDRB News.
Well, we have dry weather now, but expect to see some rain today.
Hannah Strong explains how much we'll get.
I think some people could see maybe 1/10 of an inch of rain. We're not talking huge numbers today. That opportunity comes later this week when I do expect a lot of you are going to get closer to an inch and a half of rain. Right now, we're starting to see that rain develop
a little bit farther north through central and southern Indiana. As that starts to come together, it will continue its progress toward the southeast and move into our WDRB communities. As we zoom out, this is just one of many systems in your forecast. A small low pressure center today, followed by the one not too far behind it. That's the one that's going to be bringing a little bit of a different setup to your forecast in the next couple of days. Right now in Louisville, it's 46, 47 at the airport though, and you can see this kind of cold but pretty normal air mass. We don't see huge differences across our area like a front is moving through or anything like that. Much colder air to the north though, where that rain is developing. So as that gets closer to us, you can expect temperatures to drop a little bit once the rain actually gets here. So with a temperature of 47 now, I'm only climbing to a high of 48. That rain just a couple of hours away, and when it gets here, it will prevent your temperatures from climbing any farther. So a chilly, cloudy, and eventually rainy day. That scattered rain should move in about 2 or 3, depending on where you live. Still cloudy through the rest of this evening, though the rain does start to slow down as we go to the overnight hours. Here's what advanced track looks like. Rain starts to blanket the area between 1 and 3, depending where you live, but it really starts to lighten up during the overnight hours and looking toward tomorrow. By tomorrow morning, the clouds still firmly in place, but they'll start to back off a little bit through the afternoon. I still expect we're going to have a hard time getting rid of all of the clouds, even though it is going to be more of a mild day. Now in your extended forecast, I told you there's another chance of rain, a better chance coming later in the week where you could see more than an inch of rain. I want to time that out and talk specific numbers in just a few minutes.
Anna, thank you. Kentucky horse tracks are working to bring more safety to the sport. Today, the formation of the Thoroughbred Safety Coalition was announced. Churchill Downs and Keeneland are two of the founding members. The organization will set stricter guidelines for the industry, including allowable medications, crop use, and tracking vet records.
This is not just a commitment on paper. These are real reforms that can be and will be implemented. We have an obligation to ensure that we hold one another accountable, and that if any of our coalition members are violating these rules, that we bring them into conformance. We have an obligation to ensure that thoroughbred racing is safe for everyone who participates.
This announcement comes as the industry is being criticized for the dozens of recent horse deaths across the country. On WDRB News today at 4, Jessica Bard will go into detail about some of the goals set today by that coalition.
The state of Kentucky plans to set up at least 12 regional centers where you can get one of the new Real ID cards. The Transportation Cabinet has begun rolling out the Real October 2020 deadline. You'll need the new identification cards if you plan to on a military base or go to a federal courthouse. The man in charge of the project telling lawmakers this morning there will be at least one Real ID center in each of the state's 12 highway districts.
When we're thinking about where to put those locations, we're looking at both high-density urban areas, but also very significantly regionally, we want to make sure everybody has a location within driving distance of them. And so we've spread them across the state in a way to create those doable driving distances.
Henderson says areas like Louisville and Lexington will likely have more than one location, but he says many of the program's details will have to be worked out by the administration of Governor-elect Andy Beshear. Right now on WDRB.com, Marcus Green explains some of the roadblocks in the Real ID rollout. It's day 3 of hearings for the impeachment probe into President Trump. When this day is done, we'll have heard from 3 people who were on the Ukraine call. Some political pundits are calling it the most important day of testimony yet. An aide to the vice president offered testimony first, then EU Ambassador Lieutenant Colonel Alexander Vindman. He says the reported concerns about the president because they had serious security implications.
In Russia, my act of expressing concern to the chain of command in an official and private channel would have severe personal and professional repercussions, and public testimony involving the president would surely cost me my life.
President Trump is expected to watch part of today's testimony.
A former Jeffersonville police officer admits to punching a woman. Rebecca Moses pleaded guilty yesterday to the attack. Investigators say last November, Moses used a knife to threaten a woman dating her ex-girlfriend. She punched the woman and broke a window at her home. Moses's plea deal includes a battery charge and paying more than $1,600 in property damage. When she was arrested, she was put on leave with the police department. She resigned in February. The owners of the first horse to cross the finish line at this year's Kentucky Derby plan to appeal a federal judge's dismissal of their lawsuit.
The suit challenged a decision to disqualify Maximum Security as the winner of the race. Owners Gary and Mary West sued the Kentucky Horse Racing Commission and 3 of its stewards. A judge dismissed the lawsuit on Friday, saying Kentucky's regulations make clear that the disqualification is not subject to judicial review. The owners announced yesterday that they have told their attorneys to file an appeal. The Kentucky men's basketball team beat Utah Valley last night. The game was in Rupp Arena, and Utah Valley kept it close. The Cats had 2 players score more than 20 points. Ashton Higgins had 26 and Nick Richards scored 21. Kentucky won 82-74. Cats play Mount St. Mary's on Friday. The wrong kind of driver on the green.
The damage caused by vandals at a Louisville golf course.
A landslide shut down a portion of St. Anthony Church Road at the beginning of the summer. The bigger issue lurking underground that could keep the road closed much longer.